However, the National Democracy camp was of a different opinion, and they agreed that in that peace treaty that the Soviet Union, technically not the Soviet Union yet, as they became that officially in 1922, but that the Soviets would incorporate a Ukrainian socialist republic as part of their budging communist union. So the Poles, they, in some form, they gave away this recognition in that peace treaty, and instead the areas that were in Poland, the Ukrainian majority areas, where mainly the cities were Polish and Jewish dominated, while the countryside, the rural areas, were largely Ukrainian. In those areas, instead, there wasn't much inclusion of Ukrainians into local administration, for example. In universities, the Ukrainian language was not really tolerated. There were many such cases that the Ukrainians rightfully perceived as oppression of their national identity. Thus, there was some strong animosity that was being created in these young Ukrainians in the region. Taras Boroviec was one of them. In the early 1930s, he had become a member and leader of the local cell of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists in his part of Volhynia. In 1934, one of those OUN assassins murdered the Polish Minister of Interior, Bronisław Piarecki. And after that, there was a crackdown on the organization in which Taras Boroviec was swept up and imprisoned in Bereza Kartuska, which was a prison for political prisoners in what is today the border area between Poland and Belarus. There he was kept almost up until the outbreak of the Second World War. And when the German invasion of Poland took place, that was the part of the country that he was in, namely the part that was taken by the Soviet Red Army, which invaded Poland in unison with the Germans. He managed to flee from that area, though, as he knew that he would be more in danger from the Soviets than from the Germans, as OUN also existed in the Soviet Union, even though their network was much less developed there, as the persecution was also much greater. Naturally, the Soviet Union in 1937 and 1938, I'm talking about the time of the Great Terror, that terror struck against all nationalities and all corners of Soviet society. So any Ukrainian independence aspirations and movements that had such ideas, they were naturally also swept up in those cleansings, so to say. Fleeing the Soviets, he decided to go to Warsaw. In Warsaw, he met up with leaders of the Ukrainian People's Republic, that entity that had existed between 1918 and 1921, with which Poland had allied previously. And they convinced him to, after all, cross the border again and go to what had been Eastern Poland, but had now been occupied by the Soviet Union. He went to the region of Sarny, which is the southeastern corner of what had been the Polish Second Republic before the war. There he started building up a resistance movement, and they started clashing with the Soviet forces in the area. However, this was a very small organization, but after the invasion of Nazi Germany in 1941, Operation Barbarossa in June, this was an organization on which Taras Boroviec, or Bulba as he was known, he took that nom de guerre from the famous novel Taras Bulba, written by Nikolai Gogol.
Adam, I'm just going to have to interrupt you there because, as usual, we've come to the end of the segment, but we'll pick it up next time. I've had to interrupt Adam almost in mid-sentence, but fear not, if you join us next time, as we hope you will, we'll pick up the story. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Poland Daily History.